Hey guys, welcome back to SLT Learning, and this is our series for manual plus automation testing with framework that we're gonna create from scratch. We have seen many tutorials that talk about the automation framework from scratch, but this is the series that I have come up with the for the people like who do not have any knowledge in manual testing as well. They can learn about the basic, right? They can understand how they can start from manual testing and how they can convert their manual testing test cases to the automation testing. Okay, so first of all, let me thank you all of you because I can see I have already passed the like 1,000 subscriber in my channel, and this is something recently that I have started actively working on my channel. Before that, I was used to provide a training to the most of the UK and US based organizations. But thank you very much once again. If you like my video, keep subscribing, keep sharing to your like friends and relatives who wants to learn the QA automation, manual testing, and all those things. Okay, so in this series, right, so far we have covered about how you can start the project, right, how you can start the writing the manual test cases, how you can decide the test scenario, right. Then after that, the second session that I have taken is about Git, right. So why I took the Git, because I already explained you Git is one of the widely used source control management tool, and that is something you must require when you apply for the automation. Okay, because it's not about Selenium, it's not about Java, but it's also about to understand how you push your code to the remote repository, right? How the local repository works. So in that particular video, we have covered all the basics, all the basic command from installation to how you can create your Git repository, how you can pass your data. Like we have done couple of files on our first Git repository. So everything that has been mentioned, you will find over there. Okay, but again, if you are learning the automation, right, and there are in automation there are many words like Selenium IDE, Grid, WebDriver, TestNG, Selenium frameworks, what is Maven. Then there are other other keywords as well. If you want to know in detail, I have created two videos like session 1 and session 2, right. Just refer those video, because in that 2 hours video, like you see over here and this one free demo on POM, Cucumber, BDD, API testing, you will come to know each and everything in very quick manner. Okay, so I will suggest, if you're referring this particular series, just refer this two video before that, because that will help you to gain the knowledge on the video. Okay, perfect. So let's we go to our agenda of today, right? So far we have covered the project requirement, how you can understand your project, how to get the domain knowledge, right? If you are not familiar with domain, then project knowledge, you might be somewhere, you might be late to do the testing on the application. Okay, so domain knowledge is must required when when you are working on any project. Then how you can analyze your test requirement, right? How you can bifurcate your testing requirement, and how you can start creating the manual test scenarios and test cases. Then we have talked about Git and GitHub and all those things, right? Now suppose you are working in a company, or you are the part of the automation team, or like the company which you are the only person who gonna do the automation, right? So sometimes it is required to know what is the automation scope and how you gonna select the automation tool, right? Because nowadays automation is everywhere, right? Everybody wants to automate their business. Like if it is a small scale factory or a software company, everybody wants to automate their day-to-day activity, which is a routine or repetitive task they want to automate to stay ahead in a competition. So that is a reason the automation, I will just say automation engineer is too much in demand. Okay, so if you're learning the automation, just make sure learns once so you can utilize it everywhere. Okay, so when you start any project, right, to do the automation, you have to first understand the scope of automation, right? So for that, for understanding the scope, you have to ask few questions to yourself, to your team, right? On which ground we need to do the automation, right? What kind of the application that you will have, right? Does your application stable enough to do the automation? What are the different tasks, or what are the different features that you are repeatedly testing in your automation in your project, that you need to do the automation, right? Does your application is stable enough? First, application should be stable to do the automation. You cannot automate the application which is frequently changing the requirement, right? You should have some stable requirement which you're gonna take and you're gonna automate. you're going to talk to your client as well, what their expectation from the automation side, what kind of reports they want, and all those things. So those are the things you should understand based on the automation scope for your project. Okay, and once you have that idea what you need to do or how you need to define the scope of automation, then you start selecting the automation tool, because nowadays in the market we have many kind of automation tool, right? So based on your scope you're going to decide what kind of automation tool you need, right? So again, when you start exploring something, when you are start making a decision, ask the question to yourself, ask question to your team, right? So you can just say what kind of application you want to automate. It is a web based application or a mobile based application or a window based application or a apis that you want to automate, right? So once you ask this question, right, you will come to know, okay, it is a web based application, so I have to select the automation tool which supports the web based automation, right? If it is a window based, I want to select the automation tool which supports the support the window based application automation testing. Okay, similar go with the mobile and api. Like if api we use the postman to do the manual and automation testing. Then we also have a rest assured with selenium which we can use in the api testing. Then if you are going with the web, mobile and window based application, we can use catalan studio. Nowadays we are using the cypress with the javascript, then selenium with java, or selenium with python, or selenium with I will just say c sharp as well. We are using based on the application that we have. Okay, then once you will decide based on your application, then the next question will always arise for an organization, that what kind of technical expertise they have, right? If suppose they wants to go with the java with selenium, do they have the tester who know the java? Do they have the automation tester who are good enough in java to write a automation script? Because when you write the automation script, you are doing the development, right? You are doing the coding, so you need to make sure that things, do you have the proper skill set in your team? Or if it is required, if you want to hire, do you will get the resource that will have that particular skill? Okay, so those things you have to always keep in mind when you select the automation tool, right? Because suppose if I'm the owner of the company, or I am running one company and I am selecting the automation tool based on my current skill set. But if what will happen if employee will leave the company, right? Do I get the same resource with the same skill set in market or not? So that is also the question when you go with the automation, because automation initially required too much, I will just say, effort. The return on investment is always good in automation, but also automation required the good maintenance, right? Because script may be changed, may not be changed, but when it is changed, we need some person who know the automation in depth, so he can change the script accordingly. Okay, so that is the things. Then the third things you can thought about the pricing, right? Do you want to go with the open source, or you want to go with the license based automation tool, or what kind of tool you need to select based on your team size and based on skill that you will have? Do you need the automation tool who will have the ui or only the programming knowledge required, right? Because catalog studio or few of the automation tool will give you the ui to just play like few of the feature like record and playback, inbuilt object repository, right? Reporting, like the advanced level of reporting as well they will have. So based on those things you can select your automation tool. Okay, and when you think, okay, this tool we need to go, always take a trial. If you are going with the pricing one, always take a trial with the team, or make some demo. If it is open source, ask the tester to just implement couple of functionality and try to make them automated. So you will take the decision, okay, do we need to really go with this tool or not? Try to see if they are easy to integrate with other tools or not, right? Because integration in it is always required. So just make sure whatever the tool you select, it is easy to integrate with other tool or not. So those are the few things you need to make sure when you select the automation tool and when you decide the automation scope. Okay, few questions that you need to ask yourself, and few questions you need to ask your team. Collectively you have to come up with the scope and tool selections. Because when you have this all basic needs your in your mind, then and then you will select the tools and you can do the I will just say the automation testing. So in our case, right, we have the application which is the web based application, right? So we have selected the orange, sorry, we have selected the orange HRM, right? So this is the web-based application. So for our practice, we're gonna use Java with Selenium, right? And but we're gonna use in a different way. We have too many tutorials nowadays in a YouTube that everyone follow. But how one fresher or the beginner would start the automation from manual, right? And for that, we have already created few manual test cases, right? And based on that, we're gonna decide how we're gonna do the automation. So my is a web-based application, and that is the reason I'm going to use the Selenium with Java to support my web-based automation testing. Okay, guys. So when you start working on any project, just understand the scope of why they have selected that tools, what is the benefits that tools can bring you in automation, and then go with that particular tools. Okay. So hope that things will make sense to you guys. Again, I told you in my last session, right? The manual testing is really required. Even though if you want to learn automation, you want to become an automation tester, right? You should have a good knowledge of manual testing, guys, because without a manual testing you cannot automate the things. Automation is not about only writing the Java or writing the programming stuffs, right? It's also about validation, because if you don't know the manual testing, you cannot define the validation punch mark in automation. And at the end of the day, if it is a manual or automation, you have to validate the functionality. And that is the reason manual testing concept should be clear when you jump into the automation side. So do not underestimate the manual testing. Try to learn, try to make yourself comfortable in manual testing, then and then jump into the automation. That is my genuine feedback to all the learner who is learning from this video, or they are learning from any other institute. Always keep some focus on manual testing, because manual testing concept will help you to do the good automation framework. Okay, what is automation framework and why people are talking about the automation framework, what component the automation framework will contains. So when we talk about framework, right? So as the name suggests, framework means the few of the things like libraries, the design pattern, and everything will come together, right, to make your life easy for a tester or for a developer. When they design a framework, they always make sure they have some protocol which they're gonna follow, and based on that, they can easily develop, easily maintain, right? In future, if they want to do the updates or edits, they can easily do and easily deploy to the different servers. So based on that, they will decide a framework and they will decide how they're gonna do these particular things. Okay, so let's we talk about the framework. But before that, I will just say is when you decide the framework, right, on any IDE, and either you can take Eclipse or IntelliJ, or you are working with a Visual Studio, right? If when you're working with C Sharp, so anything that you will take as a IDE, and when you start creating your framework, like the folder structure and all those things, always make sure you understand few of the requirement from the management as well, right? Because suppose if you are selecting the Selenium tool or any tools, you need to understand like what kind of the object repository they're gonna support, what kind of the report that management prefer, right? Do they need HTML report, PDF report, or what kind of report they require? Then what other information like they wants in a report, right? So if I am selecting the framework, right, guys, so let me just tell you few things. If I am selecting the framework, right, so first of all, I will ask my management or my team or myself a few questions, right? So what kind of reports I need to generate, right? At the end of the day, reports matter, right? Validation matter. Do I need HTML, PDF files, or Excel-based report, or what kind of report I need to generate, right? Then what information I need to add in report, right? Do I need to add each and every steps, test case, test steps, right? The validation points, do I need to show them in a report? Screenshot of success and failed scenario, right? Do I need to also, like, sometimes in a framework they also says the last steps of your particular execution, take the successful screenshot as well, right? If something goes fail, we normally take a screenshot. But what will happen if the test case is passed? The last screenshot we required as a part of the evidence or as a part of the proof, right? Do we need to track any logs, right? Do we need to show log in action report? In action report we can add the logs, right, as based on the log or info base. So do we need to add those information in your evidence, right, for your automation test case? So those kind of things you should ask to yourself when you decide the automation framework, right? So nowadays most of the company is like following the hybrid framework, right? So what is hybrid framework, guys? The hybrid framework is nothing. Hybrid framework is nothing but it's a combination of data driven and keyword driven framework, right? And what is data driven framework, what is keyword driven framework? So in my this particular video, if you see this video over here, it's a data driven framework, right? So I have clearly explained what is data driven framework, how that it gonna be working in Eclipse, and then how you gonna decide the keyword driven framework, right? So also you see this is the keyword driven framework, how the keyword driven framework work in automation. So those things I have already explained in my framework, Selenium framework, this particular session. So just go through this part, that will definitely help you to understand what is data driven and keyword driven framework. But in simple word, right, if your framework is driven by the set of data, like this different I will just combination of data, right, that will become data driven framework. So it is driven by data, right? So data can be read from the XML, from the property file, from the Excel, from the directly from the database. So that is called the data driven framework. And what is keyword driven framework? So in a keyword driven framework we can also call it action based framework, right? So different actions that we have, like we type into the text box, we click on a button, we click on a link, we select the image, we download the file. So based on these actions like click, downloads, type, and then select from the drop down, those kind of actions we normally list down as a part of the keywords, and we create the framework based on that. So if your framework is driven by the list of keywords or list of actions, that is called keyword driven framework. So these two things clear, right? So hybrid framework is the combination of data driven and keyword driven framework. Okay. And in this particular series, right, when you decide the framework, right, so most of the things you will find common in a framework, that is POM, page object model, right? Again, the page object model in this particular video I have clearly explained how the page object model work, right? But let me tell you one thing, one thing, what is a page object model, guys? So the page object model is nothing where you're going to divide, it's a design pattern first. It's not a framework, it's a design pattern, right? It's a model called the design pattern to design automation framework. As name suggests, each and every page will define with one class. Page is equal to class, right? And each class will contain object, repository, plus functions or methods. Functions or methods of that page, right? So that is called page object model. Each page will represent one Java class, and that Java class will contain two things. First one is object repository and the functions and method of that particular class. Okay. What is object repository, guys? That we will talk in detail when we talk about in Selenium, right? Because when we talk about Selenium, we need to know each and everything. What are the common actions that we have? What are the different locators we have? What are the different web elements we have? So those things we will learn when we set up the framework and when we start learning about the Selenium. Okay, I will go in much detail in Selenium in this particular series. I want to make sure you understand the small practical as well when you talk about the Selenium. Okay, so now when you create, nowadays mostly when we create a project, right, if you are know about the maven, so if you in Eclipse, if you create the maven project, right, so you will have something like predefined folder structure, right? When you create a maven project, you will have a predefined folder structure, where you will have the test class, then Java class, and all those things, right? So framework is also about folder structure that you want to create, right? How I will just easy to understand for other people. You create the folder structure. That is the definition of the good framework, right? When somebody see your automation framework, they can easily understand. Okay, in this folder, this is resource. Then must be they will have the access, the configuration files and all those things. If this talk about utility, then what kind of the class they will have. So if your design pattern, if your folder structure in such a way, so if any third party person is viewing that things, they can easily understand, right? So that is called the good automation framework. Okay guys, also you need to make sure when you design the automation framework, right, how you gonna integrate the other tools, how you gonna integrate the different report capability. Like suppose in a Selenium you want to integrate with the extend report, or you want to integrate log4j, or you want to integrate test ng report, right? So how the automation tool that you are using will overcome the limitation it has. Like in Selenium we have the limitation, we do not have the proper reporting, right? So that is the reason we use the test ng report, extend report, so we can integrate them with the Selenium, and we can generate the proper report, right? So those are the parts that we will have for the framework selections. Okay guys, so now let's we start and understand the what are the different components that we will have in our automation framework. Okay, so I'm gonna create, I will just take a paint, MS Paint, right? We will also see in Eclipse, we will start from scratch. But let's suppose if you are designing any framework, right? If you're designing any framework, so what kind of the key component you want to understand on that particular framework, right? So as I told you, right, we're gonna go with the page object model. And when you talk about the page object model, what different things you will have, you should have the different pages, right? So I will just say in a page object model, right? So suppose you will have each and every page, you will have a one class, right? So suppose I will just say page classes. So I will just say, let's suppose I have login page, so I will have a login dot java, right? Or I will just minimize the size, so I will have login page dot java, right? Guys understand? Then registration page, same way registration page dot java. Then we will have dashboard page, right? So dashboard page dot java, right? So this is how we're gonna decide our page object pattern, right? So each and every class will represent each page, right? And what they will contain, what each and every page will contain, it contain object repository, means web element and its locators, and common actions we perform in that page, right? Like click on button and something like that way. So whatever the common actions that we have on that page, we normally log in that particular things. So each and every class will have these two things: object repository and common actions, okay, on that particular page. So first you understand that you need to define all the pages classes, right? Now the another things will come into the picture, right? When you talk about these particular things, you will also have a base class, guys. But base class, what the use of base class and how you're going to use that base class, I will just tell you in a while. But base class we normally use to do the certain upper level actions, okay? So I will just say is the base class will be under the utility, right? So I will have another package called utility, right? In utility what we will have, we will have the few things, like we have the base class. I will create the framework in a simple way, okay? So base class will normally contain what it contain, how you gonna, I will just say initiate the web driver, initialization, right? Then what actions that you will need to perform, like before and after, or the properties, like read, how you gonna start your properties read on these particular things. Then other things you can include in a base class, like how you gonna add the test ng annotations actions. Base class you can also include, right? Then what other things you can have in utilities, you can have extend report related class. Then you have log4j, right? Then suppose yeah, so as of now just make sure you're gonna understand from the basic level. Okay, so these three things you're gonna consider in a utility. Okay guys, now what other things maybe you required in a base class now, as we talk about keyword driven, right? So I will just say common actions or common keywords dot java. Okay, so over here common actions or common keywords we can keep, right? Keywords, like keywords normally we use in a word because we want to make sure we can include the keywords. So in this particular java class you want to include all the action like select from drop down, click on button, type in a text box with the locators and the value. And this is how you can create a common keywords, and we're gonna create everything from scratch. Okay, so when we talk about our things we will gonna create everything from a scratch. Okay, so how you gonna scroll from one object to another object, how you gonna pass the value, how you gonna select the value, different type of weights, right? To manage the page synchronization we're gonna include over here. So page synchronization synchronization means weights. So those things we're gonna manage in common lab, common keywords. Okay, guys, understand? See, I am taking the framework that we're gonna cover in this particular series. So I'm taking on from that point of view. Okay. Now, how you gonna pass the data, right? How you gonna pass the data, right? So I will just say data provider side in top level, right? So we gonna pass the data from the couple of things, right? We can create the config dot property file, right? Config.property file we're gonna cover, we're gonna keep all the information, right? We're gonna keep all the information about our where we need to store the report, from when we need to pick the test cases from the Excel and all those things, right? Then we can have the extend report, like extend config file, right? That we're gonna include over here. Then we will have test ng.xml, right? Then we can have a different page wise in this particular things, or we can create a subfolder, right? Or we can do one thing, in a data provider we can create this one resource, and over here we can create data provider, right? That could be the data provider, like the class wise, right? So I will just say data provider for login page dot java, right? So over here we're gonna see the data provider annotations for test engine, data provider annotation from test engine we're going to include, and we're going to pass that value. So respect to each and every class, like data provider for login page, data provider for registration, and this is how we're going to create that particular things. Okay, and this is we normally call the resource folder, where we have a different type of resource. Okay guys, there are many other things that we're gonna create, right? So based on that we can, and everything, right, all those things we will have in a different folder structure. So in a next session when we'll see the practical, right, we're gonna see these things in a folder structure, right? But apart from that there are a few other things that we're gonna include when we talk about the automation, right? So we can just say we will have a, I will just say the data that we're gonna pass, right, to the our repository, right? So we will have a git over there, right? So we can have a git over there, git repo that we have already learned. That is the reason I covered it first. Git repo for local and remote repository, local plus remote repository, right? Then we will have Maven for build automation. Maven is a build automation tool, guys. If you want to know about Maven in detail, in this series we will cover little bit about Maven. But over here, I have also shown the practical, right? If you see my the first part, in that particular things I have shown about Maven, right? So if you see at the end, you will understand how the Maven work. Okay, how you can download the Maven dependency, and how can include in a test ng, right? Sorry, in a Selenium. Everything I have mentioned over here. Okay. So apart from the Maven, what else we will have? Like Maven is a build automation tool, guys. Then we can have a test ng that we all know, right? So test ng we can normally use for the reporting purpose. Then what else we have? In Maven we will have a form.xml where we're gonna put all our dependency. Then we're gonna talk about Jenkins, right? How you can configure the form.xml of Maven with Jenkins, and it's gonna execute the build jobs for us, right? So this is part we're gonna cover for CI/CD pipeline, right? So over here in Jenkins, we're gonna configure the Maven form.xml, also the Git repository, master repository Git. Okay, that we're gonna configure over here. So those are the things. These are the things that we normally use when we talk about the automation framework, right? If you just go over here, that is in a nutshell, automation. Automation if you google in internet, right, most of the framework will look like similar way, but few of the people will implement in a different way, or few of the people will implement in a different way, but these are the few things will remain the common, right, in your automation framework. So these are the different class files to implement the page object model, the utilities and configs and all those things, right. Then we will have the resource file where we will have all our configuration data. Then we will have a data provider from where we're going to pass the data. We can pass the data from testengine.xml as well. We can have a separate class to pass the data. Then we will have few other tools like Git, Maven, Jenkins. Then we have testng and all those things, extend report and all those things to make our framework more robust. Okay. So far so clear, right, guys? If you have any doubts, please put your comment, or you can call me anytime, or you can message me on my WhatsApp to clarify your doubt. I will definitely try to help you with the knowledge that I will have. But this is all we need to define and decide in a proper folder structure. But if somebody asks you, just explain your framework, just explain like this way, that will also give you the good marks. Okay, so hope you will understand. Now in the next session, what we're gonna do, we're gonna start the Eclipse and we're gonna start creating the automation framework. Okay. So meanwhile, just keep learning the things. If you are not that much confident on manual testing, refer this particular of my series. I have 10 videos and everything. It will clear your doubts from the performance stress testing, how to generate the test data, type of the different sanity smoke regression, security testing, what is QA, what are the different SDLC models we have. Everything concept wise I have explained in this particular series. So just take your time, go through and make sure you understand the manual testing first. You see over here, and once you will understand the manual testing, try to refer these two videos, the demo session 1 and session 2, where I have covered almost all the topics about the automation in a quick session, so you will understand what is the use of those particular things. Okay, and then after in this series we will have everything to know from manual to automation. And if you like this video, right, please guys share to your team members or the friends who are learning the automation and they need some guidance, right. They definitely refer this particular series, and in this particular series we're gonna cover everything from manual to automation, how you can configure CI/CD pipeline with Jenkins as well. Okay, thank you very much for watching this video.